Tay was having another boring day in space when his ship's alarm started screaming. He was just a salvage guy, someone who picked up scrap metal and broken ships floating around in the dark. Nothing exciting ever happened to him. But today was different. His scanner showed something big ahead, really big. When he got closer, his mouth dropped open. There were pieces of destroyed spaceships everywhere, floating like a metal graveyard. This wasn't just any fight. This was a war zone. What the hell happened here? Tay whispered to himself, steering his tiny ship through the wreckage. His hands were shaking a little. He'd seen crashed ships before, but never anything like this. The metal was still warm from weapon fire. Then he saw it. A small escape pod, barely in one piece, drifting slowly through the debris. His scanner beeped. Someone was inside, and they were still alive. Barely. Tay knew he should just keep flying. Getting involved with survivors meant trouble, especially out here in the dangerous parts of space. But something made him stop. Maybe it was because he'd been alone for so long. Or maybe he was just curious. He grabbed the pod with his ship's mechanical arm and pulled it inside. When the pod door hissed open, Tay's heart nearly stopped. Inside was the biggest, scariest-looking alien he'd ever seen. But this alien was clearly female, and she was dying. She was at least 7 feet tall, with dark blue skin and silver markings all over her arms. Her armor was cracked and broken, leaking some kind of green blood. Tay had seen aliens before, but never one like this. She looked like she could break him in half even while unconscious. Then he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The symbol on her armor, 3 red claws on a black background. He knew that symbol. Everyone did. "Oh no, no, no," he said, backing away from the pod. "You're Vorthak." The Vorthak Empire had been fighting with humans for 15 years. They were warriors, brutal and strong, who thought humans were weak and worthless. They'd destroyed human colonies and killed thousands of people. And now one of their warriors was bleeding out in his ship. Tay should have pushed the pod back into space. That would have been the smart thing to do, the safe thing. No one would blame him for letting a Vorthak warrior die. But as he looked at her, all he could see was someone who needed help. She wasn't shooting at him or trying to kill him. She was just lying there, helpless and hurt. "I'm going to regret this," he muttered, pulling out his medical kit. Tay wasn't a doctor, but growing up poor on a mining planet had taught him how to patch people up. He'd fixed broken bones, treated burns, even helped deliver a baby once. But he'd never tried to save an alien before, especially not one who was supposed to be his enemy. The warrior's breathing was getting weaker. Her alien blood was all over his floor. If he was going to do something, he had to do it now. "Come on, Tay," he told himself. "You've fixed broken engines with spare parts. How hard can this be?" He carefully moved her to his small medical bay and started working, hoping he wouldn't accidentally kill her while trying to save her life. Kirathana's eyes opened slowly, like she was swimming up from a deep, dark ocean. Everything hurt. Her head felt like it had been hit with a hammer, and her chest burned with every breath. But she was alive. Somehow she was alive. The first thing she noticed was the smell. It wasn't the clean, metallic scent of a Vorthak medical facility. This place smelled like oil, old metal, and something else she couldn't identify. Human scent. She tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through her body like lightning. Looking down, she saw bandages wrapped around her torso, arms, and legs. Someone had patched her up, but these weren't proper Vorthak medical supplies. These looked like they were made from torn cloth and some kind of sticky tape. "Hey, easy there," a voice said from across the room. "You've been out for 3 days." Kirathana's head snapped toward the sound, her warrior instincts kicking in despite the pain. A human male was sitting in a chair, watching her with curious eyes. He was small, maybe half her size, with dark hair and clothes that had seen better. Days. This had to be the one who found her. "Where are my weapons?" she demanded, her voice coming out as a harsh whisper. The human, Tay, held up his hands peacefully. "You didn't have any when I found you. Just that broken armor, which I had. To cut off to treat your wounds." Kirathana looked down at herself again. She was wearing some kind of human clothing now, soft fabric that felt strange against her skin. Without her armor, without her weapons, she felt naked and vulnerable. "No Vorthak warrior should ever be seen like this. You should have left me." "To die?" she said bitterly. That would have been more honorable. Tay shrugged. Yeah, well, I'm not really the leaving people to die type. Bad habit of mine. As the days passed and Kirathana grew stronger, she began to understand what had happened. This human had found her escape pod floating in the wreckage of her fleet. He'd brought her aboard his tiny ship and spent hours working to save her life. But that wasn't the most shocking part. When Tay showed her what he'd done, Kirathana couldn't believe it. He'd used primitive human tools to perform surgery that would have challenged the best Vorthak doctors. A broken scanner repurposed to monitor her vital signs. Kitchen utensils sterilized and used as surgical instruments. He'd even rigged up a blood transfusion system using spare engine parts. How? She asked, staring at the makeshift medical equipment. How did you know what to do? Tay scratched his head, looking embarrassed. I didn't really. I just figured your insides couldn't be that different from mine. Kept you breathing, stopped the bleeding, and hoped for the best. In Vorthak culture, there were rules about life, and death, honor, and shame. When someone saved your life, especially in such an impossible way, it created something sacred. A debt that could never be repaid with money or favors. Kirathana slowly got down on one knee in front of the confused human. Her people had done this ritual for thousands of years, but never for an alien. Never for someone they considered an enemy. I offer my service, she said formally, her head bowed. You have given me life when death was certain. By our oldest. Laws, I'm yours to command. Tay stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Ah, what now? I am your guardian, your protector, your weapon if needed. To refuse this would bring the greatest shame upon both our houses. Look, you don't owe me anything, Tay said quickly. I just did what anyone would do. But Kirathana shook her head. This human didn't understand. Among her people, refusing such an offer was like spitting on someone's grave. It was an insult so deep it could start wars. Tay spent 3 days trying to talk Kirathana out of this whole guardian thing, but she wouldn't budge. Every time he said she didn't owe him anything, she'd get this look on her face like he'd just insulted her entire family. Finally, he gave up and accepted that he now had a 7-foot-tall alien bodyguard, whether he wanted one or not. Fine, he said with a sigh. But I'm not your master or commander or whatever. We're partners, okay? You help me, I help you. Kirathana looked confused by this. Partners, but I am bound to serve you. Yeah, well, I'm changing the rules, Tay said. Welcome to working with humans. We don't really do the whole master and servant thing. Living together on a small salvage ship was awkward at first. Kirathana was used to military precision and order while Tay's ship was organized chaos. Tools scattered everywhere, spare parts hanging from the ceiling, and a coffee maker held together with tape and prayer. But as days turned into weeks, something amazing happened. Kirathana started watching Tay work, and she couldn't believe what she was seeing. When the ship's engine broke down, Tay didn't call for replacement parts or a repair crew. He grabbed a broken piece of hull plating, some wire from an old communication device, and somehow turned them into a working engine component. It shouldn't have worked. According to everything Kirathana knew about engineering, it was impossible. But the engine started purring like a happy cat. How did you do that? She asked, staring at the jury-rigged repair. Tay wiped oil from his hands with a dirty rag. When you grow up poor, you learn to make things work with whatever you've got. Rich people buy new stuff. Poor people get creative. This was completely alien to Kirathana. In Vorthak society, if something broke, you replaced it with an identical part. There was only one right way to do everything, and deviation from standard procedure was punished severely. But watching Tay work was like watching magic. He'd look at a broken scanner, think for a minute, then disappear into his junk pile. An hour later, he'd emerge with a working device that looked nothing like the original, but somehow worked even better. Where I come from, Kirathana told him one evening as they shared a meal, warriors are bred for one purpose. We fight, we follow orders, we die when commanded. I've never seen anyone create something from nothing like you do. Tay paused with his spoon halfway to his mouth. Bred, like animals? The strong reproduce with the strong. The weak are removed. It has always been this way. The look on Tay's face made Kirathana uncomfortable. It wasn't anger or disgust. It was something worse. It was pity. "That's horrible," he said quietly. "No one should be treated like that." For the first time in her life, Kirathana found herself talking about things she'd never told anyone. How warrior children were taken from their parents at age 5, how they were trained to feel nothing but loyalty to the empire. How showing emotion or individual thought was seen as weakness. "I had a sister once," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "She was smaller than me, gentler. The trainers said she wasn't suitable for combat duty. I never saw her again." Tay didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he reached across the small table and gently touched her hand. It was the first time anyone had ever touched her without violence or medical necessity. The simple gesture nearly brought tears to her eyes. "I'm sorry that happened to you," he said, "but you're not there anymore. You're here with me and I'm not going anywhere." From that moment, their partnership became something neither of them had expected. When pirates attacked their ship, Kirathana's combat skills kept them alive, while Tay's quick thinking got them out of impossible situations. She could fight an army, but he could convince that army to fight itself instead. They were becoming friends, though neither would admit it yet. 3 months had passed since Kirathana came aboard Tay's ship, and life had settled into a comfortable routine. She'd learned to make coffee the way he liked it, and he'd figured out how to cook the weird alien protein bars she preferred. They worked together like they'd been partners for years. That peaceful morning ended when Tay's scanner started screaming. "Warnings, multiple contacts incoming," he said, his voice tight with worry. "Big ones, military grade." Kirathana rushed to the scanner display, and her blood turned to ice. 3 massive Vorthak warships were dropping out of hyperspace, their weapons already charging. She recognized the lead ship's markings immediately. "The Bloodhawk," she whispered. "Commander Vextar's flagship." Tay had never seen Kirathana look scared before. She was always confident, always ready for a fight. But now she was backing away from the scanner like it might bite her. "Who's Commander Vextar?" he asked, though he was pretty sure he didn't want to know the answer. "My former commander. He trained me from childhood. If he's here, it means they've been hunting me this whole time." The communication system crackled to life. A harsh alien voice filled the ship, speaking in the Vorthak language. Kirathana translated, her voice getting smaller with each word. "He says I've been infected by human weakness. He's here to bring me home for reconditioning." Tay had heard that word before. Reconditioning was what the Vorthak did to warriors who showed too much independence. They'd basically wiped their minds and started over, turning them into obedient robots. "That's not happening," Tay said firmly. "Tell him you're not going anywhere." Kirathana shook her head. "You don't understand. Those ships could destroy us in seconds. Commander Vextar has 50 warriors under his command. We have no weapons, no shields worth mentioning. So what are you saying?" Before she could answer, the ships moved closer, and Tay got his first look at Commander Vextar through the video communication. He was even bigger than Kirathana, covered in battle scars, with cold yellow eyes that looked like they'd never shown mercy to anyone. The commander spoke again, this time in broken human language. "Little human, you will surrender the defective warrior. She requires correction." Tay stepped in front of the camera, his heart pounding but his voice steady. "She's not defective, and she's not going anywhere she doesn't want to go, Commander." Vextar's laugh was like grinding metal, amusing. The pet thinks it can protect its master. "Kirathana, present yourself for transport immediately, or I will vaporize this pathetic vessel." Kirathana moved toward the communication panel, but Tay grabbed her arm. "Don't," he said. "Whatever they did to you before, whatever they're planning to do now, it's not right. You're not their property." "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "I was created to serve the Empire. If I refuse, I'm not just a traitor. I'm broken, defective." "No," Tay said, looking straight into her eyes. "You're free. Maybe for the first time in your life, you get to choose what you want to do. So what's it going to be?" For a moment, Kirathana stared at him. Then she turned back to the communication panel and spoke in her own language. Tay couldn't understand the words, but he could hear the strength returning to her voice. "Commander." Vextar's expression changed from annoyance to fury. When Kirathana finished speaking, he snarled something back. "What did you tell him?" Tay asked. Kirathana straightened her shoulders, and for the first time since the ships appeared, she looked like the warrior he knew. "I told him that I choose to stay with you, that you've shown me more honor and respect than the Empire ever did." And what did he say? That we're both traitors, and traitors must die. The weapon systems on all 3 ships began charging with an ominous hum that Tay could feel in his bones. After their narrow escape from Commander Vextar's ships, Kirathana had been unusually quiet for days. Tay found her sitting in the ship's small communication center, staring at the galaxy-wide broadcast transmitter with a determined look in her eyes. "You okay?" he asked, settling down beside her with 2 cups of coffee. "I've been thinking about something you said," she replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "About how people deserve to choose their own path." Tay nodded. "Yeah, everyone should have that right. But what if they don't know they have a choice? What if they've been told their whole lives that there's only one way to live?" Kirathana was talking about her own people, Tay realized. The Vorthak Empire had convinced billions of warriors that fighting and dying for the state was their only purpose. They'd never been shown another way. "Then maybe someone needs to show them," he said carefully. That's when Kirathana told him her plan. She wanted to send a message across the entire galaxy using the emergency broadcast network that connected every inhabited system. It was risky. Once she did this, there would be no going back. The Empire would hunt them to the ends of the galaxy. "Are you sure about this?" Tay asked. "Once you press that button, you'll be public enemy number 1. Kirathana smiled, and it was the first time he'd seen her look truly at peace. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." She activated the transmitter, and her image began broadcasting to millions of worlds across the galaxy. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. "I am Kirathana of the warrior caste, speaking to all Vorthak people and our subject worlds. For too long we have been told that strength comes from conquest, that our worth is measured by how many we kill, how many worlds we burn. On distant planets, in military barracks and worker settlements, Vorthak citizens stopped what they were doing to listen. This was unprecedented. Individual warriors didn't speak to the masses. They followed orders and stayed silent. But I have learned something that our leaders don't want you to know. I have lived among humans, and I have seen true strength. Not the strength that destroys, but the strength that creates, that heals, that lifts others up." She gestured to Tay, who was standing just off camera, looking uncomfortable with all the attention. "This human found me dying in the wreckage of battle. He could have left me to die. He could have sold me to the highest bidder. Instead, he saved my life with nothing but scrap metal and determination. He showed me kindness without expecting anything in return. He treated me as an equal, not as a weapon to be used." Across the galaxy, something unprecedented was happening. In the lower castes of Vorthak society, the workers, the servants, the maintenance crews, people were beginning to whisper among themselves. They'd always been told humans were weak, inferior. But this warrior, one of their most elite, was telling them something different. "The Empire teaches us that showing mercy is weakness," Kirathana continued. "But I have seen what humans can accomplish with their weakness. They build when we destroy. They repair what we break. They create solutions from nothing while we only know how to follow orders." In the worker settlements of the Outer Rim, a Vorthak maintenance engineer named Kosara turned off his welding torch to listen. He'd spent his whole life fixing things that warriors had broken, never allowed to create anything new. For the first time, someone was saying his skills had value. "I call upon my people to question what we have been taught. Is a life spent in endless war truly living? Is destroying other cultures really making us stronger? Or are we simply afraid to try something different?" On the industrial world of Vorthak Prime, factory workers began gathering around broadcast screens. These were people who had never been allowed opinions, never permitted to speak out. But Kirathana's words were giving them something they'd never had before. Hope. "The human way is not perfect," she admitted. "But they have something we have. Lost. They have the courage to try new things, to fail, to get back up and try again. They don't follow blindly. They question, they explore, they dream." Commander Vextar was watching the broadcast from his flagship, his face twisted with rage. He was already ordering his communication officers to block the signal, but it was too late. The message was spreading faster than they could stop it. My fellow warriors, to the workers, to everyone who has ever wondered if there might be a better way, the choice is yours. You can continue following the path of endless war, or you can choose to build something new. As the broadcast ended, something remarkable began happening across Vorthak space. For the first time in their empire's history, people were refusing orders. The 3 Vorthak warships had Tay's tiny salvage vessel completely surrounded. Their weapons were charged and ready to turn his ship into space dust. Most people would have surrendered or tried to run, but Tay wasn't most people. "Kira Thana, I need you to trust me completely," he said, his fingers flying over the ship's controls. "Can you do that?" She looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Tay, those are military-grade battleships. Each one has enough firepower to level a city. We have a salvage ship held together with spare parts and hope. That's exactly why this might work," he said with a grin that was either brilliant or completely insane. "They're expecting us to fight like warriors, but I'm not a warrior. I'm a guy who fixes broken things," Commander Vextar's voice boomed through their communication system. "Surrender now and I will make your death quick, human." Instead of answering, Tay did something that made Kirathana's heart stop. He flew straight toward the lead battleship at full speed. "What are you doing?" she shouted. "Something incredibly stupid," Tay replied. "Get ready to jump to the weapon systems when I tell you." The Vorthak ships opened fire, filling space with deadly energy beams. But Tay's ship was small and fast, dancing between the attacks like a fly dodging swatters. He'd learned to pilot by navigating asteroid fields, and those skills were paying off now. "They're trying to disable us, not destroy us," Tay realized. "Vextar wants to take us alive." That gave him an idea. A terrible, dangerous, absolutely crazy idea. "Kirathana, you know these ships better than anyone. Where's their main power coupling?" "The central hub. But why would you—" Her eyes went wide as she understood. "No, absolutely not. That's suicide." "Only if we miss," Tay said cheerfully. He aimed their ship directly at the belly of the lead battleship. The Vorthak gunners were in a panic. They couldn't risk hitting their own ship, so they had to hold their fire as Tay's vessel got closer and closer to the hull. "Now!" Tay shouted. Kirathana's warrior training kicked in. She fired their single emergency plasma torch, not at the ship's armor, but at a tiny maintenance hatch she knew would be there. It was a shot that required perfect timing and incredible precision. The kind of shot only someone who'd lived on these ships could make. The plasma beam cut through the hatch and hit the power coupling inside. The massive battleship's lights flickered and died. "Impossible," Commander Vextar snarled from his now powerless bridge. But Tay wasn't done. As the disabled ship began drifting, he used his salvage tractor beam to grab it and pull it between his ship and the other 2 battleships. Now they couldn't shoot at him without hitting their own vessel. "You used their own ship as a shield," Kirathana said in amazement. "In all my years of combat training, I never learned anything like that." "That's because you were trained to fight fair," Tay said. "I was trained to survive." For a moment, it looked like they might actually escape. The 2 remaining ships were trying to maneuver around their disabled companion, but Tay was already plotting a course to hyperspace. Then Kirathana's face went pale. "Tay, look at the scanner." More ships were appearing, lots more. An entire Vorthak battle fleet was dropping out of hyperspace, surrounding them with enough firepower to destroy a planet. "Well," Tay said with a sigh, "it was a good plan while it lasted." But Kirathana was staring at the fleet with a strange expression, not fear, but determination. She'd made a decision. "There's something I need to do," she said, moving toward the ship's communication array. "Something that's going to change everything." "What are you talking about?" Kirathana began activating systems Tay had never seen her use before. The communication panel lit up with displays showing broadcast ranges that covered the entire galaxy. "I'm going to tell the truth," she said simply. "To everyone, about what I've learned here with you, about what humans really are." Tay felt his stomach drop. "Kirathana, if you do that, there's no going back. They'll never stop hunting us." She turned to look at him, and her expression was peaceful in a way he'd never seen before. They were never going to stop anyway, but maybe if enough people hear what I have to say, something will change. As the Vorthak fleet prepared to attack, Kirathana began recording the message that would change the galaxy forever. Kirathana's broadcast had been spreading across the galaxy for 2 weeks, and the results were beyond anything Tai could have imagined. His small salvage ship was now receiving dozens of messages every day from species he'd never even heard of. Another one, Kirathana said, reading from the communication panel. The Zelani Trade Federation wants to meet with you. They're offering protection and supplies. Tai rubbed his tired eyes. He hadn't slept properly in days. What do they want in return? They want to learn human engineering techniques. Apparently, word is spreading about how you disabled a Vorthak battleship with a salvage vessel. This was getting out of hand. Tai had never wanted to be famous or important. He just fixed broken things and tried to stay out of trouble. Now alien governments were calling him a military genius and revolutionary leader. The first species to reach out had been the Kalani, a peaceful race that had been paying tribute to the Vorthak Empire for decades. Their ambassador, a small blue-skinned alien named Zeph, had traveled for days just to meet Tai in person. Your actions have given us hope, Zeph had said, his large eyes bright with excitement. For generations we believed the Vorthak were unbeatable, but if a single human in a salvage ship can outsmart their best warriors, perhaps we can resist them too. Not everyone was so optimistic. The Thrakari Syndicate, a group of mercenaries and pirates, saw the chaos differently. Their leader, a scarred reptilian creature, had sent a threatening message. Human, the creature had hissed. Your little rebellion is disrupting our business arrangements with the Empire. Cease these activities, or we will hunt you down ourselves. But it was the message from Earth that really shook Tai. The human government had finally heard about what was happening, and they weren't happy. Mr. Lee, the stern-faced admiral on the screen, had said, "You are creating an interstellar incident. We order you to return to Earth immediately for debriefing." Tai had stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. He couldn't go back now, even if he wanted to. Too many people were counting on him. The rebellion was spreading faster than anyone expected. On 17 different Vorthak worlds, workers had stopped reporting for duty. Some were sabotaging weapons factories. Others were simply refusing to follow orders. It was small acts of defiance, but they were adding up. Kirathana showed him reports coming in from across the galaxy. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the screen. "The Nexari Republic is offering asylum to any Vorthak refugees who want to escape the Empire. The Valthran Commonwealth is sending medical supplies to rebel settlements, but the Empire wasn't sitting idle. Intelligence reports showed massive battle fleets gathering at staging areas throughout Vorthak space. Grand Admiral Thorkva, the Empire's supreme military commander, had issued a simple order: crush the rebellion by any means necessary." "They're planning something big," Kirathana said, studying the fleet movements. "This isn't just about recapturing me anymore. They're going to make an example that will terrify everyone back into submission." Tai was looking at a star map when he noticed the pattern. All those fleet movements weren't random. They were converging on a single system. "They're going to attack Kepler Station," he realized. Kepler Station was a neutral trading post where humans, Kalani, and several other species conducted business. It was also where many of the rebellion's supporters had been gathering. "If they destroy Kepler Station," Kirathana said quietly, "they'll kill thousands of innocent people. And they'll prove that allying with humans only brings death." The weight of responsibility was crushing. Tai had never asked to be a leader, but somehow that's what he'd become. Across the galaxy, people were risking their lives because they believed in the message he and Kirathana had sent. If he failed them now, the Empire would be stronger than ever. "We have to warn them," he said finally, "and we have to help them fight back." Kirathana nodded. "I've been in contact with some of the rebel cells. They're willing to follow your lead, but they need to see that humans can do more than just inspire. They need to see that you can win." As Tai set course for Kepler Station, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The small rebellion that had started with one broadcast was about to face its first real test, and the fate of the galaxy might depend on whether a salvage operator and a former Vorthak warrior could somehow pull off another miracle. Kepler Station had never seen anything like it. The massive trading post, which usually hosted merchants and travelers, was now buzzing with representatives from dozens of alien species. They'd all come for the same reason: to meet the human who had started a rebellion with nothing but words and courage. Tay felt completely out of his depth as he walked through the station's main corridor. Everywhere he looked, there were aliens he'd only heard about in stories: the crystalline Shi'ari who communicated through light patterns, the bear-like Gornathi whose homeworld had been conquered by the Vorthak 50 years ago. Even some humans from the outer colonies had made the dangerous journey to be here. "I have no idea what I'm doing," he whispered to Kirathana as they approached the conference room. "Neither did I when I first met you," she replied. "But you figured it out. You always do." The meeting that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. For the first time, species that had been enemies for generations were sitting at the same table, united by a common cause. Ambassador Zeph of the Kalani spoke first. "The Vorthak have demanded tribute from us for 60 years. Our children grow up knowing only fear and poverty, but your message has shown us that resistance is possible." A Gornati warrior named Thrak slammed his massive fist on the table. "My people want revenge for what the Empire did to our world. We will fight alongside anyone who shares this goal." But it was Captain Elena Rodriguez, representing the human outer colonies, who surprised everyone. "Earth's government might not support what you're doing, but the colonies do. We've been defending ourselves against Vorthak raids for years. It's time to stop running and start fighting back." For hours they talked and planned. Tay found himself doing something he'd never done before: leading. Not because he was the strongest or the smartest, but because he listened to everyone and found ways to make their different strengths work together. The Kalani had the best intelligence network in the galaxy. The Gornathi were fierce fighters. The humans brought innovation and adaptability. The Shi'ari could coordinate communications across vast distances instantly. Even the former Vorthak rebels had valuable inside knowledge. "We're not trying to conquer anyone," Tay explained to the assembled delegates. "We're just trying to create a galaxy where everyone can choose their own path, where strength means helping others, not dominating them." But as they celebrated their new alliance, Kirathana received a disturbing message from her contact still inside the Empire. Her face went pale as she read it. "What is it?" Tay asked. "They're not just sending fleets," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "The High Command has authorized the use of the Void Catalyst." The room fell silent. Even Tay, who knew almost nothing about Vorthak weapons, had heard whispers of the Void Catalyst. It was a planet killer, a weapon so terrible that even the Empire had never used it in battle. "They're planning to destroy Kepler Station and everyone on it," Kirathana continued. "They want to make an example so horrifying that no one will ever dare rebel again." Ambassador Zeph's light patterns flickered with fear. "How long do we have?" "The weapon is being mounted on Grand Admiral Thorkvar's flagship. They'll be here in 3 days." The coalition that had seemed so hopeful just moments before was now facing annihilation. Some delegates started talking about scattering, hiding, abandoning the rebellion before it was too late. But Tay stood up, and something in his expression made everyone stop talking. "No," he said firmly, "we're not running, we're not hiding. If they want to use their ultimate weapon to destroy everything we're trying to build, then we'll just have to find a way to stop them." Captain Rodriguez laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Stop a planet killer with what? We have maybe 50 ships between all of us, and most of them are converted cargo haulers." "We have something they don't," Tay said, looking around the room at all the different species. "We have each other. We have trust. And we have the one thing the Vorthak Empire has never understood: the power of people working together instead of following orders." Kirathana smiled for the first time since receiving the message. "You have a plan, don't you?" "The beginning of one," Tay admitted, "but I'm going to need everyone's help to make it work." As the coalition began planning their desperate defense, none of them knew they were about to change the course of galactic history forever. The Vorthak fleet arrived at Kepler Station exactly when Kirathana predicted. Grand Admiral Thorkvar's massive flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds, led a formation of over 200 warships. At the center of the flagship was the Void Catalyst, a weapon that could turn entire planets into cosmic dust. Tai watched from the bridge of his salvage ship as the enemy fleet took position. His coalition forces looked pathetic in comparison. 50 mixed vessels, most of them cargo ships and civilian transports, hastily fitted with whatever weapons they could find. "They're demanding our surrender," Captain Rodriguez reported from her ship. "The Grand Admiral says he'll give us 1 hour to evacuate the station before he fires." "Tell him we decline," Tai said calmly, "and activate Phase 1. What happened next looked like complete chaos to the Vorthak observers. The coalition ships scattered in all directions, apparently fleeing in panic. Some headed for asteroid fields, others dove toward the nearby moon, a few seemed to be running toward empty space. Grand Admiral Thorkvar laughed from his command chair. "Cowards. They abandoned their precious station at the first sign of real power." But Kirathana, monitoring Vorthak communications from Tai's ship, knew better. "He's not seeing the pattern," she whispered. "Your plan is working." The Vorthak had made their first mistake by assuming the coalition would fight like traditional military forces. Instead, Tai had split them into small groups with very specific missions. The Kalani ships, with their advanced sensors, had mapped every weakness in the Vorthak formation. The Shi'ari were using their light communication abilities to coordinate movements faster than radio. The Gornathi had positioned themselves near the asteroid field, ready for close combat. "Phase 2, Tai announced. Suddenly, the scattered coalition ships weren't running anymore. They were everywhere at once, attacking from angles the Vorthak had never considered. The human colonist ships, modified with salvaged Vorthak weapons, struck supply vessels. The Gornati burst from the asteroids like angry bears, ramming enemy ships with their heavily armored hulls. But the real target was always the void catalyst itself. While the Vorthak fleet was distracted by attacks from all sides, Tai and 3 other small ships made their approach to the flagship. It was the same tactic he'd used before, being too small and fast for the big guns to target effectively. "Kirathana, I need you to guide me to the weapons power core," he said, flying his ship through a maze of enemy fire. "There," she pointed, "to a specific section of the massive vessel. But Tai, the armor is too thick. Our weapons can't penetrate it." "We're not going to shoot it," Tai replied. "We're going to deliver a package." The package was Ambassador Zeph's idea. The Kalani had developed a computer virus that could overload Vorthak systems, but it had to be uploaded directly to the ship's core. It was a suicide mission. Whoever delivered it wouldn't be coming back. "I'm going," Kirathana said, grabbing. "A spacesuit?" "No way," Tai replied. "This is my plan, my responsibility. And I'm your partner," she said firmly. "We do this together or not at all." Together, they launched from their ship in small personal pods, racing toward the flagship's hull. Vorthak fighters pursued them, but the other coalition ships provided cover, sacrificing themselves to give Tai and Kirathana a chance. They reached the hull and began cutting through with plasma torches. Behind them, the space battle raged on, but it was just a distraction now. Everything depended on what happened in the next few minutes. Inside the flagship, they fought their way to the Void Catalyst's control center. Vorthak warriors tried to stop them, but Kirathana's combat skills and Tai's unpredictable tactics kept them moving forward. When they reached the core, Tai plugged in the virus while Kirathana held off the guards. The massive weapon began shutting down, its terrible power fading away. But Grand Admiral Thorkvar wasn't finished. He activated the ship's self-destruct, planning to take everyone with him. That's when something unexpected happened. Vorthak crew, members throughout the fleet, began refusing orders. Inspired by Kirathana's message and the coalition's example, they turned against their own commanders. The rebellion that had started with words was finally reaching the Empire's own forces. The self-destruct was stopped by Vorthak engineers, who chose hope over hatred. The remaining loyal ships retreated, leaving behind a galaxy that would never be the same. 6 months later, Tai found himself in a place he'd never imagined. The leader of the Galactic Coalition, a new alliance based on cooperation instead of conquest. Representatives from hundreds of worlds came to their meetings, working together to solve problems instead of creating them. "You know," he said to Kirathana, as they watched ships from dozens of species docking peacefully at their new headquarters, "I never wanted to be important. You didn't become important, she replied with a smile. You just showed everyone that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they work together. And in that moment, watching former enemies become friends, Tay realized that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is trust others to be their best selves.